Sean, how would you sum up the spring field for this group this spring, especially maybe some of the guys that you were looking to make a step forward this spring?
Yeah, I just had, having a conversation with those guys just now. I told them that I thought we had a great spring. We look fast. We've limited the mental errors, so that was a big emphasis for us. And anytime you got younger guys stepping into a new role, you always worry about can they function when the bullets are flying, right? So I thought they've done a great job with that. In particular, watching guys like Sheldon really take the next step. He's going to be a redshirt junior. He's really taking the next step. He's playing within himself. He's big and strong, and that's how he's playing right now.
You hear a lot of guys that have a really good season going into the offseason, coming into the next season, say, I want to make that play that I missed last year, or I'm looking at all these cut-ups and there's these little things. How do you take that step where you're already really good, but you're trying to eliminate not errors, but just be that much better?
Good is the enemy of great, right? So that guy's got to always rise himself to the next expectation. And I tell those guys that I want to make sure that they study the film, understand why, and when they look at it, I want them to critically look at that thing and say, this is the way Coach Spence and Coach Pride would evaluate me on this particular rep. And don't have that linger that you made a mistake, because that's going to happen. That's part of the game. It's not going to always be perfect, but more so just making sure that mistake doesn't happen again and having the details of what was the problem in the first place.
Where do you think Ettore will make the most progress between this season and coming one?
I think it'll all be mental for him. And what I mean by that is not a negative when I say that. When I say it's mental for him, is that each year the game is slowed down for him because he understands pre-snap reads now. He understands leverage. He understands set points of offensive line. So if he can continue, he's going to keep growing each day and each game. And that's where I think his game will just shoot up to the next step. It'll just be a mental thing. And again, that's not a negative thing. That's just taking it from the classroom into the field.
What's the ceiling for him?
I think the sky's the limit. The guy's got some of the most natural ability I've ever been around, especially since I've been here. I put him in the category of Carl Nassib in the beginning of the year last year, and everybody looked at me like, sure, and then all of a sudden he was 20 TFLs later. I think I was right. You know what I'm saying?
What would you say Shane Simmons' progress has been so far this spring, and what's the next step for him as he works into your rotation?
So obviously, he's been a little bit banged up, right? So, we got to get through those things with him being banged up, but he works so hard in the weight room and training to get back on the field. I just expect him to jump right back into that rotation. He's a guy that, going into last year before he got hurt was fighting for the starting spot. And it was like every other day it was like him or Ettore, and him, Ettore, Shaka, and, then Ettore, surpassed those guys when they had a couple of injuries. So I'm looking forward to having him this year coming up.
Shaka in that same spot now that maybe Ettore was last year in terms of obviously breaking into the starting rotation?
Yeah. So, if we were starting the game tomorrow, Shaka would start. Obviously, it's still tremendous competition with Jason Oweh and Daniel Joseph and those guys. And then when Shane comes back, what Shaka is Shaka's a leader on the field. He's also one of the smartest guys I've been around in the classroom as far as football, right? So, he can decipher plays like nobody else I've seen, and he knows what's going on in the back level. So it's exciting to coach him. Now, sometimes he outthinks himself, but at least he can have that conversation with you. With what happened on that play and those type of things. So
James talked about your ability to connect with the players. How big of a part of that is that with your coaching approach, and how are you able to connect with the players in a big way like you do?
Well, I think I'm younger than them sometimes until I start running and then everything starts breaking down. But no, I think when you develop the relationship with them in the recruiting process and you make sure that you continue that relationship from the recruiting process to the coaching part, and you never change. I was crazy when I recruited them, and I'm crazy when I coach them here now. But I try to tap into their lives outside of football. I think it's important for us to do that as coaches. I think anytime that you have a player that you recruited and their parents entrusted you in the lives of them, that you have to take a great responsibility to that. And, I've always felt like I've had a really good knack to that. As you guys heard the story. I grew up without a father, and I think this is probably my gift.
Do you think Ettore has grown as a leader, throughout the spring and throughout the offseason?
Right, so Ettore is a quiet leader. He's not going to say a whole bunch. Half the time, you ever guys watch Heathcliff, when Heathcliff talked, the thing would go over his head. He doesn't say anything; he just looks at you. But he's such a a go-hard guy on the field, that he leads by example. He didn't have to say anything. When I turn on the film and I want to tell Jason Oweh, this is how you practice, and Etor's running sideline to sideline and not taking a play off, that's being a leader in itself. You know, so you have vocal leaders and you have guys that lead by example. So, you know, it's not just that he makes plays, it's his approach. His approach is full speed go all the time. What you guys see on the game field and what that guy does in practice is the exact same thing.
You mentioned Jason. Has he made the kind of strides you were hoping for this offseason?
I mean, you got to remember now, Jason only played, this is going to be his 4th year of football, right? So, you know, his change from last season, right about around the bowl practices, it started like the switch started hitting for him. And then all of a sudden now, you know, you talk about a guy that's 6'4", 6'5", 260, running 4.42, is starting to transfer over on the field. He's a problem off that edge. I mean, it's scary when he comes off that edge. And I'm happy about his progress mentally too. You know, I think at first he was taking a picture of things. You know, it was things would just happen. He would take a snapshot of it instead of just going. So he's really taking some big steps.
James mentioned that Judge and Damian, things have maybe clicked a bit for them this spring, and you have mentioned how hard it is to make that transition from gaining the weight and staying coordinated. Things, you feel like both of them are trending in the right direction towards impacting on the field. And then with Judge, when you have a father who's a 10-year NFL veteran at the position, how much is juggling, you know, what dad's telling him versus what you're telling him as a coach? I mean, is he hearing it from two sides, obviously?
No, I'll tell you a funny story in the recruiting process. One of the things that why Judge chose Penn State was he and his dad's connection with me. And his dad thought I was very in line with the way he was coached, you know. So he said, you know, he liked the terminology, he liked the way we coach, our approach to the D-line play. I mean, his dad, he knows a lot of football, and it's great talking to him. And yeah, sometimes I bounce ideas off him. You know, when I see him, he'll come up here and I'll talk to him. The guy's been in the league for 10 years. So I don't ever think there's any friction there with both of those guys talking to him. Now, the other thing I'll say is that Damian and Judge have both just taken tremendous steps forward, you know. And another guy throwing in is Aeneas Hawkins. I mean, these guys have really just gone from A to B to C pretty quickly here in the spring, and that's what you want to get out of spring practice, right? You want to get these younger guys, the older guys, not to plateau and to keep going, and you want the younger guys to be viable in your rotation. And I think those two guys have done that.
How does PJ fit into that same mix, because he's a younger guy still, but he got the experience?
The thing that you have to watch when you get a guy like that played as a freshman, right, that they don't get sophomore-itis, right? Like, he has not had to go through some of the, you know, the scout teams and those things that kind of like make you who you are, right? But he was so talented that we played him early. So the biggest thing for PJ is to take that talent now, that raw talent that he had, and now refine it into being a great player. I think this guy got a chance to be special. You know, he reminds me of Austin Johnson. You know, he's 6'4.5", 6'5", 305 pounds, and he can move. You know, he can move. He's very light on his feet. So I'm really hard on PJ this spring. Like, I sent his dad a message. I said, we got to be good cop, bad cop here, because I'm going to be really, really hard on him, because, you know, I didn't want him to think he's arrived because he played early. So.
Have a chance to be the best defensive line from top to bottom you've had since you've been here?
We got a good chance. You know, I mean, we've had some great D lines that have come through here, but we definitely got a chance. We're very, very talented. We're fast, and I think that the cohesiveness of this group is tremendous right now. I mean, those guys hold each other accountable, and when the room can hold each other accountable, it makes your coach's job a lot easier.
Daniel Joseph, what kind of stride? You mentioned him a little bit earlier. Yeah. Where is he in the mix?
Right.
And sort of, has he reached the point of progression that you thought he would at this point in his career?
Yeah, so Daniel, I mean, Daniel was a very, very gifted athlete. You know, he's got really long arms, 35 and a half inches, something like that. And he's kind of gotten banged up a couple times in his career, but now he's at the point right now where I think he's about to skyrocket to the next level. I mean, he's a guy that I'm expected to play a lot for us and really help us out. So, I mean, he will compete for a starting position. I mean, he's not going to just sit there and just let those guys run by him. So.
Moving up to associate head coach last year, were there lessons that you learned, and did that experience make you a better coach?
No, I don't think so. I don't think. I mean, everything's going to make you, or situation makes you a better coach every day. Whether you make a mistake or you do the right thing. I think that added responsibility was good for me professionally. I think I can reach more of the players on the team. I was always, engaged with other players other than my position. Now I feel like they know that they can come talk to me about things and sit down with them, and it kind of takes some things off of Coach Franklin from a discipline standpoint, and he's not always got to be the bad guy talking to people, and they can hear another voice. So I'm really excited to continue to have this role.
Robert Windsor seemed to finish the regular season really strong last year, but then he had to sit out Citrus Bowl. Franklin told us it was some violation of team rules. How was he bounced back from that? And how does he balance that really strong Big Ten play with the disappointment of not being on the field there?
Right. So I mean, you can forget, you can remember but not forget. Right. So he knows that obviously that being suspended for that game was not something good. He and I will never forget that, obviously. But moving forward, his approach to spring has been tremendous. I mean, he is a true scientist of his own game. Like, I mean, he studies his technique over and over again. I mean, I get multiple screenshots or videos of what do you think about this play when he's at home? What do you think about my hands here? I mean, he's constantly working on his craft, and he learned a life lesson, right? So we learn a life lesson, and we got to move forward and make sure that we don't do that again.
Thanks, Vince.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.